Surrey's countryside is full of quiet paths, heath and woodland, places people walk every day without realising the stories beneath their feet. During the Second World War, these woods and commons were not just peaceful spaces, they were part of the front line of Britain's air war. Across Surrey, dozens of aircraft crashed during training, operations, and the intense pressure of wartime flying. Today, I'm following a route that links 3 of these crash sites, starting at Jacob's Well, crossing Whitmoor Common and finishing at Merrist Wood. All 3 of these crashes happened just north of Guildford, around the area of Worplesdon. The first one we'll be going to is in Jacob's Well. This is where a Dakota or a C-47 crashed. We'll be crossing over Whitmoor to where the Spitfire crashed, and then we'll go on to Merrist Wood where the Halifax came down. The story of the war in the air is usually boiled down to the Battle of Britain, the Blitz, or individual daring raids like the Dam Busters. But the RAF's losses didn't only come from closing with the enemy. After the Battle of Britain, the Royal Air Force and the US Air Force were operating thousands of aircraft across Britain. Training units were flying constantly. New pilots, navigators, wireless operators and gunners all needed to be prepared for operations. Each day across the country, aircraft were lost to training accidents, mechanical failures, bad weather, and the sheer intensity of wartime flying. The pressure on these units was immense. Aircraft were flown hard, often with minimal downtime. Engines failed, instruments malfunctioned, and weather suddenly changed. And the skies over southern England were crowded. Fighters, bombers, transports, training aircraft, all sharing the same airspace. And while the story of the Second World War in the air is most commonly focused on the Blitz over London and the Battle of Britain over Kent and Sussex, this Surrey heathland had its part to play as well. This is where we can see the everyday Allied air effort, away from the enemy, on the home front. These are 3 crashes, 8 lives lost, all from mistakes and poor fortune. I'm starting just outside Jacob's Well, following the road out of Guildford, past the Slyfield Industrial Estate towards Woking. The path cuts through an everyday suburban estate, and as you come round the bend there's a small memorial tucked beside a hedgerow. It's easy to miss, a simple plaque, a few daffodils and a wreath left from last year's Remembrance Day. It marks the site where this plane, the Lilly Belle II, tragically came down. On the 25th of October 1944, a C-47 Dakota, the Lilly Belle II, was flying a routine transport mission out of RAF Greenham Common. The plane was meant to head south, cross the Channel and then land at a Belgian airfield. The Lilly Belle II was, unsurprisingly, pilot Mercer Avent's second plane of that name. His wife's maiden name was Lillian Bell. On that day, the Lilly Belle II had a cargo of 2.5 tons of signalling equipment, intended to supply the faltering Allied advance in Northern Europe. A month before, during the infamous Operation Market Garden, C-47s had been used to drop airborne forces around the fateful bridges across the Netherlands. The Dakota was a reliable aircraft, the workhorse of the Allied forces, but even the most dependable machines had limits. That late autumn day saw low cloud cover at 2,000 feet. With the North Downs rising to 600 feet, the lead aircraft called for the formation to increase their elevation. The 4 C-47s began to climb into the clouds. Second Lieutenant Harry Watson, who was at the rear of the formation, described what happened next. Spotting a gap in the clouds, the Lilly Belle II either climbed too steeply and stalled, or the cargo became loose and fell to the back of the plane. Either way, the plane went vertical, with the tail pointing directly down towards the ground. The plane dropped vertically and flipped upside down, and at such a low altitude, the pilot did not have room to pull up or allow the crew to bail out. The Lilly Belle II hit the middle of this field and buried its nose, propellers and engines into the ground. The plane then set on fire, and much of it was gutted by the flames before the local fire service could extinguish it. A local man, Basil Gordon, a soldier in the Black Watch on leave, went to the field after seeing the plane come down. By the time he got there, he saw the crew had been removed and a tarpaulin had been placed over them. A guard was placed by the Queen's Royal Regiment while the RAF and the US Air Force came to inspect the crash. The bodies of the airmen were then taken to the nearby Connaught Military Hospital in Brookwood. Here they were identified and then buried in a temporary American cemetery near Cambridge. Here we have the only mention of the crash in the local paper, an example of wartime secrecy and the crash's commonplace nature. The memorial here stands as a reminder of the men who lost their lives, and of how deeply the war touched even the quietest corners of Surrey. Since its installation, this plaque has been a site of remembrance for people in Jacob's Well. Fragments of the crashed plane have also been incorporated into the plaque. These are the 4 men who died that day in 1944. If we now head back through Jacob's Well and northwest along the Woking Road, we can see the crash site from the northern side of the field. The Dakota itself played a vital role in the war, carrying troops, supplies and paratroopers across Europe. But flying these aircraft was demanding. They were heavy, slow to climb and vulnerable to sudden changes in weather. Crashes like this were tragically common, even far from the front lines. From Jacob's Well, I'm heading northwest, along the road and then onto the footpath that leads you through Whitmoor Common. Here the landscape begins to thin out. Farms and hedges are replaced with woodland, and these trees soon give way to sandy tracks and heather. During the war, much more of Whitmoor Common would have been open heathland. And it's here on this open heathland that we find the next crash site. Here we had the railway, which at the time of the war would have had high tension cables running across it. These cables will unfortunately play a part in our next crash site. Just 1 month before the C-47 crash at Jacob's Well, on the 15th of September 1944, squadron leader Anthony Martindale crash-landed on Whitmoor Common. The Spitfire is one of the most iconic aircraft ever built, fast, agile and central to Britain's air defence. The pilot who crashed it was running speed trials from the nearby RAE Farnborough. In April of that year, Martindale had recorded the fastest ever speed by a piston-engined fighter, Mach 0.91, or 620 miles per hour at 27,000 feet. During this flight, the propeller detached from the aircraft when nearing the speed of sound. This forced the plane into a steep climb, where the G-forces caused Martindale to black out. When he came to, he'd climbed 10,000 feet. With no propeller, he managed to glide his plane 20 miles back to Farnborough, where he landed safely. This part of the common is very open, with soft, slightly damp soil. This open, soft landing is one of the reasons why the RAF highlighted these places to pilots in case they needed to crash land. Reach the next crash site. You cross the common over these boardwalks. This route takes you roughly parallel with the dive that Martindale would end up having to take. Heading north from the boardwalks, you soon reach the pond. From here, you turn right and follow the path all the way along until you hit the road. Here we can see Martindale on the left, with 3 other test pilots. On the 15th of September 1944, Martindale was test piloting an experimental Spitfire 11, a photo reconnaissance variant. Flying high above Guildford, Martindale went into a steep dive when the engine began to break up. This caused a fire to break out and a small explosion, which covered his windshield in oil, obscuring his view. Hurtling down towards Whitmoor Common, Martindale somehow managed to pull the Spitfire level at the last moment, yet he still couldn't see properly. This is when the plane clipped some now long gone high tension wires crossing the common and the railway line. He would find himself less than a quarter of a mile away, crash landing in this field right here, next to the Jolly Farmer pub. The entire plane caught fire as Martindale managed to just get free, but not before retrieving the important speed recording camera. Only later would Martindale discover that he had seriously injured his back in the crash. For his bravery and calmness, Martindale earned a 2nd bar for his Air Force Cross, the medal he had originally won from the earlier test flight. Standing here today, it's hard to imagine the noise, the fire, or the shock of that moment. It's also striking that there's no indication of the crash, no memorial or plaque marking the site. These test flights were vital to the development of the RAF. These pilots often go forgotten, even though it could be equally as dangerous as fighting in combat. From Whitmoor, I'm following the woodland path west towards Merrist Wood. The terrain here changes again. The open heath gives way to woodland. As I went through Whitmoor Common, I found these cool hedges shaped like little dogs. As I pass through this large open field towards Worplesdon, you get a real sense of how low the clouds can be on a day like today. Leaving Whitmoor Common behind, the path begins to rise gently through the trees. As you reach the top of the hill, you're treated with views back out over Guildford towards the North Downs. Soon, St Mary the Virgin's Church appears out of the woods. In this graveyard are 5 graves related to the Air Force, 5 Commonwealth war graves, each of them young men. Worplesdon is not unique. This is true of most parishes across the country. From here, the route crosses the main road through Worplesdon and drops down through Merrist Wood. Merrist Wood is now an agricultural college, but at the time of the war, this whole area was one private estate. During the Second World War, this land was used as an evacuation centre for senior county council officials. Passing the old Merrist Wood house, the landscape opens up once again. We're onto Merrist Wood Golf Course. This land, at the time of the war, used to be common land, something that would become relevant to me as I continued our walk. It's hard to imagine now, but in 1941, these open fields and hedgerows were set ablaze by a falling Halifax bomber. It's here, at Merrist Wood, that the final story of this walk unfolds. By 1944, more than 10,000 aircraft movements a day were recorded across southern England. Pilots trained here in all weather, often with only basic instruments and minimal flying hours. The margin for error was small, and the consequences were often fatal.
It was a new kind of war, and the RAF were the men who could fight it.
The night of Monday, the 10th of March 1941, saw an RAF bomber raid on the French coast. This was to be the first operational appearance of a newly developed bomber, the Hadley Page Halifax. These first operations were known as nursery raids. That night, 6 Halifax and 8 Blenheim bombers of the 35th Squadron of Bomber Command had taken off from RAF Linton-on-Ouse, crossed the Channel and targeted the docks at Le Havre. No bombers were lost on that raid, yet on their way back to Linton-on-Ouse, the squadron passed over Guildford. Unfortunately, a night fighter protecting Portsmouth from Luftwaffe raids mistook the plane for a German bomber and opened fire, just over the Hog's Back, the ridge you can see in the distance. Machine gun fire tore through the starboard engines, and in seconds they were in flames. An elderly woman who lived nearby recalled that the plane angled downwards, like a large flaming torch in the night sky from the Hog's Back to Wood Street. The flight engineer, Sergeant Ron Adey, had been struck in the leg by shrapnel and was pushed out of the Halifax by the other crew, who managed to pull the ripcord on his parachute as they did. He was soon picked up by locals and taken to the hospital in Guildford. The pilot, Peter Gilchrist, also managed to escape the burning plane, landing opposite the Duke of Normandy pub, southwest of the crash site. The 4 remaining crew members crash-landed near Merrist Wood after sacrificing their chance to escape, helping Ron Adey get out. 3 would die on impact, with the 4th, Lucas, dying just a day later. Gilchrist would call this whole affair a rather sad beginning for the debut operation of the Halifax. This was the first Halifax lost in the war. By the end of the war, 1,833 would have been lost. In 1997, this plaque was unveiled on Merrist Wood Golf Course, commemorating those pilots.
The RAF was flying higher than ever, not only higher, but farther.
Despite the memorial, there is no public right-of-way on this land, and now the golf course is entirely closed, pending refurbishment. I think it's pretty shameful that this memorial is now inaccessible, with fences put up to stop people walking around a huge area of the local countryside. Additionally, I've also noticed that flags have been thrown up recently around the local area. Just a suggestion would be that if you want to be patriotic and take pride in our country for something that is worthwhile, you can instead petition the new owners of the land for dedicated access when they get round to developing the site. Or, for the moment while it's not accessible, go and have a look at it yourself. There's many easy ways onto the golf course.
An air force. An air force outnumbered 10 to 1 by the enemy, both in men and machines.
This walk, from Jacob's Well to Whitmoor and on to Merrist Wood, covers only a few miles, but it links 3 stories of loss, courage and the hidden cost of wartime flying. The Battle of Britain is rightly remembered, but the RAF sacrifices went far beyond the famous battles. Across the country, aircraft were lost on training flights, routine missions, and in the everyday demands of keeping Britain in the air. Walking these paths is a reminder that history is never as distant as it seems. It lives in the ground beneath our feet, in the stories we tell, and in the people we choose to remember.